When did your parents' addiction become unforgivable? My father gave me 1 month to marry his loan shark Vladimir Chechen when I was only 17, so that his casino debt could be paid off. All my life I knew my dad was a gambler, but I didn't know things got this bad. He owed Vladimir over $300, with interest that was stacking and compounding every single day. My father once came to his knees and hugged my legs, saying, "Please, Vladimir's willing to forgive everything if you marry him. He's been extremely patient with us. I don't know how much longer he'll be patient." At first I thought he was talking about a snowman, but then I remembered who Vladimir was. I met when I was only 14. He'd come by the house for business dinners with my dad and I. He looked like an older Ivan Drago with yellow teeth and a patchy beard. He spoke with the thickest Russian accent you only hear in movies, and whenever he thought I wasn't looking, I felt his eyes drag across my entire body. He asked about my high school plans and whether I was dating anyone. Dad laughed nervously and changed the subject. So now, 3 years later, everything finally made sense. The marriage contract had already been drawn up. I would have to live with Vladimir, produce his offspring within 2 years. While my dad was speaking, I thought about what I could say to the police for help. That's when he burst into laughter. "I can already tell what you're thinking. Vladimir has connections everywhere. Don't even think about alerting the authorities, or you'll just make this harder for yourself." The scariest part wasn't even his anger. It was how calm he was while planning to sell me. He then took my phone and smashed it against the wall before heading to bed. When 3 a.m. hit, I tried to run, but the car wouldn't start. The nearest civilization was 8 miles away. But when you're 17 with no phone and no one coming to save you, 8 miles feels like 80. The next morning, I woke up to find Dad had installed locks on my door from the outside. "Just a precaution," he said, sipping his coffee like he hadn't just turned my bedroom into a cell. I only had one visitor, and that was Vladimir. At first, he would act somewhat bearable, constantly referred to me as his future wife, only touched me on the shoulder or hand. But the more uncomfortable I looked, the more he kept pushing. And soon his hand was glued to my inner thigh whenever we sat together, his fingers pressing harder as he talked about how many kids we'd have. Sometimes I'd glance over to my dad, but his expression was always the same, always nodding in approval, always with a slight smile on his face. But the worst was yet to come. My dad and Vladimir were sitting at the kitchen table when my dad went to the bathroom. Vladimir tried to call me over, but I pretended to be too focused on cooking to hear him. But when his voice turned threatening, I sighed and walked towards him. "Hey," he whispered, the stench of whiskey and cigarettes rotting my nostrils. The second he pulled me onto his lap, my dad walked in. "How are my two lovebirds?" my dad exclaimed, before walking over to the oven and checking on the Alfredo. Vladimir whispered again, "Does a pretty thing like you like it from behind?" That was my breaking point. I immediately ran to my room and cried my eyes out. No one came to check on me, until 10 minutes later, when I heard the front door slam and my dad finally walked in. "Dad, I can't do this." "You should be ashamed of yourself," he interrupted. "Vladimir is doing us a huge favor and you're throwing it out the window." I stared at him in disbelief. "Dad, please don't do this. I'll work 3 jobs. I won't sleep. I'll eat 1 meal a day. Whatever it takes to pay off the debt, just not marriage. No, my word is final," was all he said, before slamming the door and locking it from the outside. From there, I stopped eating, sleeping, showering. It all felt pointless. My head was consumed with desire for my dad to have a heart attack and drop dead. The thoughts made me feel guilty. Then I'd feel anger for feeling guilty. It was a lot. And with 3 weeks left to go until the forced wedding, Aunt Rachel showed up. She was Dad's younger sister who'd moved away years ago after some family drama I never understood. Later that night, she cornered me in the kitchen. "I know what's happening," she whispered. "I've been where you are. My dad tried to sell me off too when I was your age." My heart nearly stopped. Someone finally understood. Aunt Rachel said she'd been monitoring the situation through cousins and couldn't stand by anymore. She had a plan to get me out. I was terrified of being caught, but more terrified of what would happen if I never tried. Aunt Rachel was everything I needed. She'd sneak me food when Dad started monitoring my meals, and she'd create distractions so I could have a few minutes alone to breathe. The night before we were supposed to execute our escape plan, I couldn't sleep, so I crept downstairs to get some water and heard Aunt Rachel on the phone in the guest room. "Yes, Vladimir, she completely trusts me. She'll get in the car willingly tomorrow." I pressed my ear against the door and she continued, "Dad promised me my cut of the trust fund, right? 50,000 like we agreed?" My legs nearly gave out. Aunt Rachel had been working with them the entire time. Full story on channel, link below.